United States and Canada. Europe's renewable energy standards has birthed an entire new forest products industry in the United States. But you know what, they're realizing how stupid is this. Their energy prices are so high that this past winter in Germany, the citizens were cutting down, stealing trees out of city parks to burn in their wood stoves at home. So Europe realizes that this has gotten totally out of control. Interesting piece of news here. I'm using this in my column for this week that I wrote in part on the plane on the way here yesterday. But this is very interesting to show you the attitude of what is happening with climate change in this country. The attitude about it. Now, it started with Europe, April 16th. There's a big move that they voted, as I said, to not prop up their teetering cap and trade program. But this just came out last week, Washington Post. Obama expressed concerns about the political pain involved. This is on climate change. The headline of this article is, as Obama moves forward on climate, he faces a tough political task. Okay? They say that Obama expressed concerns about the political pain involved, saying that dial testing. Now, do y'all know what I mean by dial testing? So you have to, for this to work, you have to know what dial testing is. You've all seen on television, they have a group of what do you call it? A group of peers, a bunch of people, focus group, there we go. They have a focus group, and they've got these dials, and they listen to a speech or they listen to an ad, and they dial up or down as to whether they like what's being said word by word, second by second. You know what I'm talking about now? Okay, that's dial testing. Okay, the dial testing of his State of the Union speech showed that favorability ratings plummeted when he vowed to act on climate change if Congress refused to do so. Okay, now, have you noticed lately that we have a president who's in trouble? Have you noticed that? You know, just in the last few weeks. You know, for a political junkie like me, it's been so delicious. But, you know, he's kind of in trouble right now. And the dial testing showed that when he promised to act on climate change, the favorability ratings plummeted. So the public is not interested in this. It has fallen in interest. People care about jobs. People care about the economy. And they are beginning to understand that climate change is a loser for them. And so that's some very exciting news that's happening. Now, so that's one little story. April 16th, Europe, what's happening right now in Europe in climate change. Now, another little story is that this year, 2012, legislative session has been the most active session on trying to repeal, now honestly none were successful, but that there's an interest in trying to repeal this country's renewable portfolio standards. That's a change. That's a shift. Now, those states that did, 3 states, Colorado, Nevada, and Minnesota, did approve some increases in their renewable portfolio standards. That means how much renewable energy must be part of the electrical grid, okay? So 3 states did increase them, but in all cases, they were much lower increases than were being pushed for. So that's a story where we have won. But the story that I love the best, not where we've won, but where there's good news, there's positive momentum. Do you see what I'm talking about here? There are some good things happening. But the best, and my favorite, is California. How many of you know what just happened in California? Okay, good. I love that you don't know. You think you know?
I think they're going to start drilling in the
Monterey Shale? Yeah, you're close.
Yeah.
You're on the right track there. Okay, it has to do with the Monterey Shale. California legislature. Okay, first you realize California is like the greenest of the green, correct? Do you know that? Okay, California is uber green. Jerry Brown has his environmental credentials run very deep. You know, he's proud of his environmental credentials. So the environmentalists were confident, cocky even, in California when they had nearly a dozen different bills before the legislature that would restrict, impede, or ban fracking. Nearly a dozen bills in the legislature. When some of the bills made it out of committee, environmentalists were quoted as saying something to the effect of, there is tremendous movement in the legislature, tremendous momentum it was in the legislature to stop this terrible practice. But you know what happened? Now that you know where I'm going with this story, what do you think happened? Every single one failed. Not one of the nearly a dozen bills to ban fracking in California made it through. Not one made it through. Now, there is one that did make it through. However, the author of the bill, it made it out of the Senate. It hasn't been voted on in the Assembly yet, I checked this morning. But it made it out of the Senate. But the bill's author, who is a known environmental ally, the bill's author said that she was willing to take out the fracking moratorium out of the bill to get it to the Assembly. So now all it's left is basically a transparency bill that you have to notify people, give them 30 days notice if you're going to frack and so forth. But the moratorium part is totally gone from the bill. So no bills to ban fracking made it out of the California legislature. That's news in the last couple of weeks. Now, why is that so important? The interesting thing is who didn't vote for the ban. Now, I have to phrase that very carefully. Who didn't vote for the ban? Because, of course, all the Republicans did not vote for the ban. But you realize California has a liberal supermajority. So the Republicans, they may as well just not even show up because they have no voice in the California legislature. But all of them did not vote for the ban. However, 12 Democrats also did not vote for the ban, and 18 Democrats abstained from voting altogether. So you can be pretty sure those 18 Democrats who abstained, they were really yes votes who didn't want to cross their party's leadership. They didn't want to be on record. Okay, when you look at that group of Democrats who did not vote for the ban, who were they? The interesting thing is that they were the blacks and the Hispanics. The rich whites voted for the ban. But the blacks and the Hispanics, who come from districts with 12% or higher unemployment. What does that tell us? Exactly, Harry. That means jobs. They realize that. In California, since 2011, 974 wells have been fracked. In California, since 2011, 974 wells. 1/3 of the functioning wells in California involve hydraulic fracturing. They know if we ban hydraulic fracturing, we stop production. So they realize the connection between that, and the economic news has superseded the environmental fear-mongering. The need for jobs, I find that to be a very positive thing. Do you all find that encouraging? California, the greenest of the green, has decided not to ban hydraulic fracturing. Now, a couple weeks ago, the Sierra Club launched a new campaign. The new campaign that the Sierra Club launched is called Our Wild America. And the Sierra Club's campaign, I believe, shows that they are beginning to feel some of the losses that they have been having. And there's others I could tell you, but you notice I'm watching my clock here so that I'm not going to take too much of your time. I write on these things every week. I hope that you'll after hearing me today, want to read the column that I write every week in townhall.com. It's out every Sunday morning. Because what I try to do is to give you things to talk about. You know, every one of these meetings talks about the importance of educating the public and how do we get out there and how do we get them to understand. I've been having interesting conversations with the young intern Mason over here about how do we get to your age group? How do they not understand the facts that the climate hasn't warmed in 17 years? Even Dr. Puchari, the head of the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, has acknowledged that the climate has not warmed for 17 years. Now, I mentioned Tuesday I was speaking to a bunch of geologists, and one of them came up to me and said, why is that relevant that the climate hasn't warmed in 17 years? We Earth scientists all know that the climate has warmed and cooled and warmed and cooled. And I said it's important because their models predicted catastrophe. Their models predicted increased warming, but the CO2 has gone up, but the climate has not warmed in 17 years. And that is important because even the UN, the head guy of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, has acknowledged that the climate has not warmed in 17 years. President Obama is now talking about preparing our cities for increased storms and weather, which kind of implies that he's acknowledging that fossil fuels are going to be with us for the unforeseeable future. So the environmentalists are feeling beaten back. They've had some serious losses in recent history. Europe is one big story. California is another big story. There's many other little ones that I could tell you. But the climate, but the environmentalists are kind of now behaving like cornered rats. When the Sierra Club's new program, Our Wild America, came out, was announced a week or two ago, the headline for the article said, environmental groups to President Obama designate more national monuments to block oil and gas drilling. Now, that doesn't sound like good news, and no, that's not really part of the good news story. But what it shows us is the desperation that they are feeling. Because historically, environmentalists have used some flora or some fauna to block energy development in America. I was very involved last year in the Sand Dune Lizard battle. Now, you all in Kentucky may not have to deal with the Sand Dune Lizard, but in the Permian Basin of New Mexico and West Texas, this was a big battle. The Sand Dune Lizard was nominated to be an endangered species. And, you know, endangered species listings, historically, they have gone right on through. In my book, I have a case history of the spotted owl and that endangered species listing and how that devastated an economy and a portion of the country and an industry. And it's a great case history to see how the environmentalists have used the Endangered Species Act to block economic development in this country, not just oil and gas development, but economic development in this country. And in the case of the Sand Dune Lizard last year, I believe it was the first time where the impacted community fought back. And in the Permian Basin of southeastern New Mexico and West Texas, we fought that Sand Dune Lizard listing hard. And you know what? We won. The Sand Dune Lizard did not get listed as an endangered species. Now, that may not seem like a big deal, but when you look at the Sierra Club's new campaign, see, environmental groups to president, designate more national monuments to block oil and gas drilling. You see, they're no longer hiding behind the screen of a flora or a fauna. They're coming right out and saying what they are really all about. In the article about that Wild America program the Sierra Club had, United Press International called the Sierra Club the largest environmental lobbyists in Washington.